morning, everybody. Glad to see you here today on a Saturday when you'd be out fishing or doing something else. But anyway, the monthly meeting of the board of the San Carlos Estates Water Control District is called to order at 10 o'clock a.m. on September 17th, 2022. Landowners meeting. Okay. Landowners meeting is called to order, and we actually pretty enough a little bit. The quorum is present. So, I just want to again thank you all for coming on Saturday. Roll call: Acting Chair Jim Bradford, Jennifer Finazzo, Secretary Treasurer Chris Lawson, Attorney Richard Pringle, and our new engineer Ron Edenfield. Glad to see you here today. Thank you for coming on Saturday. Okay. How many landowners do we have here today? Anybody count them? We're supposed to have a count on the number.
Well, we got some people coming in.
And do we have any guests here today that are not landowners? Okay, we'll get that number in a minute. Okay. The meeting agenda has been distributed in the board packets. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
Are you looking at the wrong meeting? Landowners meeting. We're going to do a roll call, then you're going to review the statutory requirements.
I did.
24 signs.
We already did that.
Okay, roll call.
Okay.
Yeah,
We already done the roll call. So
We're down to me.
we're down to Mr. Pringle.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, everybody. Mr. Pringle's going to take over.
Mr. Chairman and guests, landowners, on the agenda, the next item is item number 3. I'm on the revised annual landowners meeting agenda, and as you see, the next item is my review of the statutory purposes of the landowners meeting.
Excuse me, can you do volume? Thank you. We can't hear you back here. Thank you.
How about now?
Thank you, sir.
Okay. This is the annual landowners meeting, as indicated by Supervisor Bradford. I'm going to do a very brief review of the purpose of the landowners meeting. This is a Chapter 298 district, a water control district. We are governed by Chapter 298 of the Florida statutes. Chapter 298 of the Florida statutes describes the requirement to have an annual landowners meeting, in particular in Section 298.11 and Section 298.12. It talks about the purpose of the annual landowners meeting, and they are really narrowed down to 2 broad topics. One is the election of a supervisor, and we have a process in place to complete that election, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The other purpose of the meeting, or the primary purpose of the meeting, is to receive the report of the district work performed in the last year. That is often given by the district engineer. Mr. Edenfield is here to present that. Today, because we are also holding the monthly supervisors meeting immediately following the annual landowners meeting, the thought was to allow Mr. Edenfield to give a more comprehensive report, which might also include a review of permits and things like that, like he normally provides in the supervisors meeting, so that when he's done with his report, he can be released to go back and get ready for the football game this afternoon on TV, while the rest of us stay here and work our way through these meetings. With regard to the election of a supervisor, the statute says 298.11 and 298.12 says that every year the landowners who have paid their assessments and are current on the payment of their assessments can come together in an annual landowners meeting and can elect a supervisor to serve, in your case, for 3 years. The position that is up for election on the Board of Supervisors this year is the position held by Ben Bogatz. Mr. Bogatz, Supervisor Bogatz, has indicated that he does not want to run again for the supervisor's position, and so it is an open supervisor's position that will be filled today through either an informal or formal process. There is a formal process if there is more than one candidate who is nominated by the landowners, qualified landowners. Then we have the method to use to have an election and select the supervisor. Now, last year, if you were here and you recall, that process did take some time to complete. It is a lengthy process, but it is intended to make sure that everybody has a fair opportunity to cast your votes based upon the number of acres that you own for the candidate that you desire, so that we can have a good democratic process. Hopefully better than other places. And that's all I'll say about that. In addition to the description of the election, in addition to the election of a supervisor, then as you go down, you will see that we will also have a question of the payment of the supervisors. That is another statutory requirement that has to be approved by the landowners. That has been done in past years, and it is also on your agenda. There will be several opportunities for public input through the process, and I will also be available to answer questions. The goal is to have, and Chairman Bradford will be attentive to questions by members of the public, by landowners throughout this landowners meeting. So if you have a question in the process, please make sure to raise your hand, and Chairman Bradford will recognize you. We are going to try to maintain some degree of decorum and properness in the flow of the meeting today, so that we can get through the business that is before you. Those are the highlights that I have. And I will also indicate on the record that the meeting was properly noticed as required by the statute. We published the notice twice in the news press, Mr. Chairman, and also letters were provided to all the landowners. And in the letters, in the notice that was provided to the landowners by mail, I also included a letter, just as a cover letter, that the supervisors had asked me to put into that mail-out notice, just as a description of some of the parts of the permitting process for the use of the right-of-ways, the district's right-of-ways. So, Mr. Chairman, that's generally my review. Depending on the election process and the nomination process, I can go into more detail about that, depending on what happens with regard to the number of nominees that are received. Okay. When you open the floor for nominations, as this is an election of a supervisor from the landowners, at a point you will open the floor to nominations by the landowners of a candidate to fill the supervisor's position. We'll receive nominations. No second is required to a nomination. We'll go through the nomination process. Receiving a motion and a second to close the nominations would be appropriate at a time. Then all the nominees will be voted upon using the process that we have. The final thing that I will mention, Mr. Chairman, is the next thing on the agenda is the election of a chair and a secretary for the landowners meeting. Any landowner can nominate the chair and the secretary. Normally, the chair of the board is elected as the chair of the landowners meeting, and normally the secretary for the landowners meeting is the secretary of the board as well. That's normal, not necessary, but normal, and that is the next item up on your agenda.
Okay. This time we'll take nominations for the chair's position for the meeting.
I nominate Jim Bradford for the chair for the landowners meeting.
I said that.
Pass.
Yeah, well, you don't need a second, and you can ask if there are any other nominees.
Are there any other nominees?
This is a landowner's action, so
Just for this.
yes, just for this meeting only, yes.
And the next is the secretary for the landowners meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. If you could, just ask if there are any other nominees for the position. There's one nominee right now for the chair, and that's you. If you could ask the landowners if there's any other nominees.
Are there any other nominees for the chair's position for the landowners meeting?
Nominate Jennifer Piazza.
I didn't hear that. By the way,
Nominated you.
we are all using microphones. If you could either speak up real loud, that we would prefer. We furnished a mic over here on the side. If you would step up to it, especially when we get done with just these short, brief, things. That if you have something to say, that everybody in the room can hear you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think what I heard was a second nomination of Supervisor Finazzo. Is that what you said? Okay. So Supervisor Finazzo has also been nominated to chair the meeting. Do you want to accept or not accept the nomination?
Based on, I'll just not accept for now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that nomination was not accepted by Supervisor Finazzo.
Thank you.
But was made. And so there's still one single nominee at this time, and that is Chairman Bradford. So if there are no other nominations, then a motion to close the nomination for the chair's position would be appropriate.
Okay.
So there was a motion made to close nominations. Is there a second to that motion?
Second that.
Okay, and there's a second to that motion. So all in favor of closing the nominations, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. That's the landowners.
Yes,
right?
no, that's the landowners too. Everybody. Okay. So then the nominations are closed for the chair's position, and Mr. Chairman, you are the chair of the landowners meeting as well. So then if you want to follow the same process for the secretary's position, that would be good.
Okay, we're now opening nominations for the secretary's position for the landowners meeting only.
I nominate Chris Lawson for secretary for the landowners meeting.
I'll second that. Open for discussion.
Are there any other nominees?
Any other nominees?
Motion to close the nominations then.
Motion to close the nominations.
That was, you made the motion to close the nominations then. Is there a second to the motion to close
I
the
second
nominations? There's a second to the motion to close the nominations. All in favor of closing the nominations?
Aye.
This is the landowner's decision, very good. So then the nominations are closed, and Ms. Lawson is the secretary of the annual landowners meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So then you're down to item number 5 on the agenda, Mr.
The engineer. At
Yes.
this time, we're going to turn the meeting over to Ron Edenfield, our engineer.
We have
How's
plenty
that
of
work? Everybody hear me?
There's seats up here.
I really took a bath this morning.
What's
It's the horses.
I took a bath.
For introduction to the landowners, for the record, my name is Ron Ettenfield, professional engineer. Our firm is RMEC LLC. This firm has been in business for 11 years now. Prior to that, I spent 10 years with a larger, more national firm. And prior to that, I had 10 years with my own firm previously. Been in Southwest Florida since the mid-'80s. Previously worked, originally brought over here to work for the Water Management District. Spent about 5 years working for South Florida. And then finally gave up on trying to be an effective bureaucrat and decided to go out and get a real job. So I've been consulting in drainage and water resources elements in this area since that time. It's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to have been appointed as the district's engineer. We look forward to working with the board of supervisors, council, and of course all the landowners. Our engagement was rather recent, so I don't have a great deal that I can personally offer with respects to the annual report. What we did ask was that Morris Depew prepare the annual report, since they had in fact been the engineer of record for the predominance of the past year, and they were kind enough to do so. And I'll get into that in just a moment, but I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity and just speak a little bit about what we have done since we've been engaged, and that is review a little bit of the history about the district. And getting back up to speed, I had dealt with San Carlos Estates Water Control District back in my tenure with the Water Management District in the mid to late 80s. So I'm familiar with the area and familiar with a good bit of the history, but I wanted to fill in the gaps of the intervening period, and we have done that in that time. I've also looking at the district's water management and water resources policies, going through the archives, looking over some of the forms for permitting and that type, and the procedures for that as well. A little bit about the history, not anything specific, but just to kind of give you a general overview of our perspective on that. The history is important. If we don't know our history, and we've all heard this, we're doomed to repeat it. But it's also significant in how we progress into the future. I'm a firm believer that where we've been is far less important than where we go. So just a little bit about our general overall perspective on things. The items that we've accomplished during our brief tenure here is just engineers of record as well. We have established a permit tracking system so that we can keep up with applications for driveways and requests for use of the right-of-way, which is going to be our primary responsibility. Getting that system into place so that we can get those in, get them processed, get them reviewed, and get them issued as quickly as possible. We don't want to be the holdup on anybody's construction. We've also sat down and met with the folks at Morris Depew Associates and had a good meeting and have worked out details on some transition to get their archives over into our archives so that there's some continuity of record in case there's ever a freedom of information request on archives of the district from the district engineers, that we're going to get that in place. We expect to start on that next week. In the near future, what we will be doing, I will be doing, is coming in and conducting a fairly extensive inspection of the works of the district. I'm generally familiar with everything, but I want to put eyes on the current conditions of all the weir structures, canals, and such, to make sure that there's nothing that jumps out to us that might present an issue during the balance of the rainy season. Flooding's never an issue in March and February, but it sure gets to be a hot item come September, August, that time of year, so we want to make sure we're on top of that. One of the overarching concerns with respects to operation of a surface water management or drainage system is the compliance with the NPDES program. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but that's the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. It's a program that's overseen by the state of Florida. Its original authority comes from the Clean Water Act, and it's a federally mandated program to make sure we don't pollute any worse than we are. So it's a good program. We are a co-permittee with Lee County, and going forward to finish up this year's cycle, Morris and Depew will continue to be working on that since they carried the ball essentially to the 5-yard line. It makes absolutely no sense and would be rather expensive for the district for us to start what they've already completed and pick it up and finish. So, in prudence to the economy, Morris Depew has consented to continue to carry that ball through this cycle, and they expect to be filing that report within the next few weeks. Another concern that we want to be attentive to during our tenure is the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Act, and floodplain criteria, floodplain regulations. This area is coming under a new round of effective maps that will be the rule come sometime in November. And essentially that's where your finished floor on your home must be for new construction as well as other aspects. And so we'll be looking into that as well. The last thing on our to-do item is really to set a schedule. We come down and do that site inspection and visit with the supervisors to look over the system and have them share with us concerns that they have, points of interest or points that need immediate attention or points that need future attention. So with that, I'll get on to the engineer's annual report. And I'm just going to read it verbatim. It'll be part of the record, but the district operation permit compliance, the San Carlos Estates Water Control District has successfully operated for the past year with no significant infrastructure failures or operational violations construed by the NPDES permit. The San Carlos State Water Control District continues to operate as a co-permittee with Lee County and other local governments in the municipal separate storm sewer system, the MS4 permit. The year 5 of the 4th cycle, so this has been going on for about 20 years now. The annual report will be submitted next month. Based on the FDEP approval of the MS4 annual report and on routine inspections of the district, SCEWCD appears to be in general compliance with all permits subject to routine maintenance. With respect to infrastructure maintenance, in this past year, of the 23 plus or minus miles of swales, approximately 7.5 miles have been inspected. That's about a third of the system, with only one instance of maintenance being necessary. With respects to the inlet sketch basins and grates, there are a total of 96 in the system, and approximately 17% or 16 total were inspected, with 5 instances of formal maintenance being required. Approximately 40% of the 655 total pipes, that being 259 pipes, were inspected, and with 134 instances of maintenance being required this past year. And the perimeter canal, approximately 5.6 miles of canal, 100% were inspected and with no significant maintenance being required. With respect to the roadways, litter information was not available at the time that NDA prepared this report, so it did not include that. Their summation is that all inspections were done, and subsequent maintenance activity was completed in compliance with the MS4. With respect to permits that were issued, in the past year, 20 permits were issued, 15 were closed out, leaving 5 still active and open. Since this report was prepared, we have received 1 application for a driveway and 1 application for a gate, which I will get with the supervisors on and discuss. In summation, the authors reviewed the information above, along with the current water control plan dated April 18, 2005, is adopted by the San Carlos Estates Water Control District Board of Supervisors. The plan remains in effect as adapted. And it is signed faithfully submitted by Michael William Morris Jr., PE, former district engineer. And that concludes the engineer's report for 2022, or the year 2021-22. And we look forward to preparing a report for you this time next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did you have an author report for the next meeting, or are you complete?
We'll have it for the next meeting.
Okay, I thought we were going to let you go ahead and do that at this meeting, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
So you can do that now if you would like, and then you'll be welcome to leave after that.
Well, essentially, I presented the monthly report of our accomplishments over the, I can summarize those again, is establishment of a permit tracking in order to efficiently process any requests for right-of-way use. That is in works currently. We will continue to meet with Morris Pugh Associates on the transition and getting the archives established in our files so that they would be available. So, okay. And we will be scheduling with the Board of Supervisors a site inspection to review the facilities and review the NPDS documents that are prepared and then get ready for the next cycle of NPDS processing. With respects to applications received, as I noted, there is one right-of-way permit that's been received, or two right-of-way permits, one for driveway, one for a gate. And that concludes our monthly report.
Thank you very much. And you're
Thank you.
welcome to leave if you would like or
Are
say
there any questions?
Yes.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask you to call for questions from the landowners of the
Any
engineer.
questions at all from the landowners? Mr. David Nagy, would you please take the microphone?
Turn up the volume a little, please.
Tammy, would you turn that on?
Sure.
Here's one right
Oh, here's a mobile one.
There's one right there. We have one set up for them.
Can you hear me?
No, you just said they did it one time.
Yeah, what batteries are that? This is my phone. Check 1, 2, 3.
Right here.
Here.
There you go. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so just a quick question on these numbers. So I guess we're looking at two different things, perhaps.
If you stand right in front of that mic and that speaker, you might get some feedback.
Okay, so you're reporting these permits and open permits, and the numbers are kind of small, whereas every month we get an open. So last month there were 65 open driveway permits, 3 new permits, and 3 closed. So how do those numbers reconcile, or are they two different numbers?
One new.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. I didn't quite catch the question.
So you're reporting
You can address that.
Yes.
the number of permits, right?
We'll go finish.
Mr. Bringle can address that. if you'd like.
Yes, sir. The total number that you see every month is related to all permits. I believe what Mr. Edenfield was referring to was the permits that were applied for just this last fiscal year. So there were 20 permit applications.
There were 20 permits issued.
Yes. And how many applications? 25?
Actually, he doesn't provide the application number. It's simply, he provided the number that were issued during the year and the number that were filed out and closed.
Okay.
So I believe that 15 would go to your
Open.
65.
New.
Yes.
I believe the 15 would go to your 65 as total, but I will look into that and make sure that I'm understanding those numbers. And you're saying the 65 was reported in the last monthly meeting for,
Yes.
and I think Richard.
And that's a running total number. Yes, sir.
Cumulative.
Right, where the numbers Mr. Edenfield mentioned earlier were related to the annual fiscal year time period.
So that means there's dozens that have been open for a long, long time. How that works?
There are still, yes, sir, there's still quite a few that are open for one reason or another. There have been, over the years past, there were a significant number of open permits, and those have been reduced over time, but there's still quite a few that are open. Yes, still open, still to be resolved.
Does Mr. Edenfield know in the record, the historical records, why the existing permits are still open? What's the issues?
I do not know, but
I'd be curious if it's a repetitive issue. A few of them.
Okay, we're going to have to ask you to come up and take a mic. Okay, we would just like everybody to be
Here,
able to do
Tim,
that.
let it go.
We'll be glad to pass this mic around. Should be off.
It's on.
We're going to quit letting her work on mics.
No. The batteries were going down. Don't get mad at me.
I was playing.
Now, my question to Mr. Edenfield is, of these 65 cumulative permits so far that have been issued, and some percentage is open, what are those issues, and are they the same issues that are impacting the current new 20 permits, of which 15 have been closed and 5 are still open? Are we seeing an issue that can be resolved by the engineering firm or the board to get rid of some of the back issues that might be consistent with some of these permits that are still staying open?
I think I can address that. I don't know the history of that. Whoops, there it goes. But I'll get familiar with that, and my curiosity is why there's so many open permits. If somebody hasn't, my initial thought is if you haven't taken action on your permit to complete it within a certain period of time, then that permit goes in the round file, and you'll need to start over again.
And the reason I ask that question is, if you're saying you're establishing a new, more efficient permitting process,
We're going to look at the policy.
I would think to try to figure out, resolve what these issues are, so whatever you establish new makes it much more streamlined. So people can predict, okay, if I put a permit on the first of the month, by the middle of the following month, I should be done based on standards. If I don't have any issues with my driveway, what I'm doing.
And that will be our goal, is to get the application in and get it finished and get it closed out in an efficient manner so that it's not something that just languishes and the district has to continue to track and follow up on and inspect. And that gets to be costly over time. And it's not the burden that I feel like the district, and of course this is all subject to supervisor's decision on how they want to go, but I think our recommendation just off the cuff here, knowing not a great deal, so don't cast it in stone, but would be that the process needs to be efficient. We need to get them in, get them done, get them out, and close them out. If the district or the district's engineer, if we're having to keep up and keep track and routinely inspect and just keep messing with it, that costs money. And it's not, the burden should be on the landowner to complete that process, not on the district to babysit it. So.
I might just make one little comment, if I may. When the use connection permit application is filed and issued, a lot of times that is at the time of new construction. They don't close that permit until the CO is ready for issuance, or they've been requested to do a final inspection, which is typically done after the house is fully constructed. So for many of these, I would suspect that, without any real direct knowledge, that a lot of that has to do with construction. If it was just a second driveway being put in, then those are probably readily closed within a reasonable amount of time. But as we all know, sometimes constructions can last 2-3 years.
Yeah.
So one related question, you answered during the treasurer's report, but I'd like Mr. Edenfeld to hear this. So when we get a permit for any of these things, there is money involved, and these are a lot of transactions. So these funds get booked in as income to St. Carlos, and that process is well established and it's 100%, right?
The permit fee goes to the engineer. He sends it to the district upon issuance of the permit, and then it gets deposited into the general maintenance funds. So one of the things in the last few meetings, Bill would say, oh, there's 3 permits issued. I'm like, I only got 2 checks. Where's my other check? So then I would follow up with him to find out about the other check, in which case, like, for one thing, the application didn't actually get processed and approved because they were still waiting for more information. So he would not release the funds until that permit actually got issued. But that is the process.
And the check's written to the order of
The
St.
district.
Carlos.
Mm-hmm.
And is included in the annual budget as well. So it's a line item of revenue in the annual budget.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you for your time.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to working with everyone. And if there are no more questions, I'll take my leave.
Careful.
We just wanted you to make it out
Yeah, there's a lot of cords.
without tripping over the cord.
I think I can try that.
Thanks.
Let me turn this off. Okay, there we go.
Yes, so that concludes.
That concludes the engineer's report. And at this time, we're ready to start to open the floor for the election of
Nominations.
pardon?
Nominations.
Nominations for supervisor. One thing at this time, there's only been one official nomination made, and that is with Mr. John Salucci. Is that correct? And so just want to let you know, he's the only one officially. We can accept nominations from the landowners, and you can elect anybody or yourself, or you can nominate anybody or yourself. And we're ready to do that at this point.
Yes, sir. So technically speaking, the nominations are now open. Mr. Salucci has indicated an interest in being nominated to be officially a nominee. Chairman Bradford, someone should officially nominate Mr. Salucci.
I'll nominate Mr. Salucci.
Okay, so there's been a nomination made of Mr. Salucci in the process, in the official process. So are there any other nominations would be the next question of the landowners. Are there any other nominations?
Any other nominations of landowners for the position of supervisor?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other nominations, then it would be appropriate to have a motion to close nominations.
Okay, if there are no other nominations, we're going to request that you close the nominations at this time.
A motion to close nominations would be appropriate by any landowner can make the motion. So there's been a motion made to close nominations. That requires a second, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that.
And then a vote on that motion to close nominations.
Okay, is that made by the landowners?
Yes, sir, that is made by the
vote by the landowners to accept,
To close
to
nominations.
close nominations. All in favor?
So, Mr. Chairman, the nominations of the supervisor's position are closed, with one nominee being Mr. Salucci. And so you are done with the nomination process. You can strike off items 7 through 15.
Pretty far down the list.
We just marked off a bunch of items on the list.
Okay. At this time, you can accept the chair up here and take a seat. Okay. Did we need to? Mr. Pringle will swear in.
Yes, sir.
Well, do we need a public input or anything?
Mr. Chairman, we're down to item number 17, and I will administer the oath of office to Mr. Salucci as the new supervisor.
We'll keep that. I'll make you one, John.
Mr. Chairman, we can administer the oath of office to Mr. Salucci, and we can do that. Normally when I do that process, the new supervisor just stands and raises their right hand, and we do it orally, and then we'll have Mr. Salucci sign an oath of office that will become a part of the public record of the district later. So, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to, I'll follow that process.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Salucci, if you'll please stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially perform the duties devolving upon me in the office of supervisor of the district in which I have been elected, and I will not neglect any of the duties imposed upon me by Chapter 298 of the Florida Statutes. That's it. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Next on the list, we have to approve the salaries of the supervisors, and you may step down after this. The salary of the supervisors is $50 a month. So this has to be approved by the landowners. So we need a vote on that.
to pass it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why can you not give yourself just a little bit more than $50 a month?
Florida statute.
The law says that's the cap.
That's it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's what I saw in the law, so that's why it's not been
That was
questioned.
a question I needed to ask.
Can you take that?
Everybody has the idea it's not raised for salary.
But thank you.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. You are.
If the, if it's $50 a month per person up there, why is the proposed budget $79,000 for the year? Who else is on the payroll?
The
Somebody
secretary.
address that.
And the superintendent.
That'd be the for the secretary, treasurer, and the manager. And what was the other one?
That's it.
That's it. The supervisors. So that's more for slated and allocated for the secretary, treasurer,
And that's
and
all included in the
manager.
79?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Just keep it.
Go ahead.
I'll just yell.
No, you couldn't.
Okay, I'm done. Yeah, Mike's so annoying then.
So, is it approved?
Yes, so
We
Mr.
don't have a
Chairman, you have a
second.
motion, but you've not received a second to the
We
motion
need a
yet.
second for the motion.
Okay, wait a minute. Who made the motion?
Tammy.
Okay.
Oh, I did.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Mike,
Thanks, Mike.
I was thinking maybe
we want to go have lunch.
we need. All right, so there's been a motion and a second made to approve a salary for the members of the Board of Supervisors at $50 per month per supervisor. So you could call for a question of the landowners, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What, the question for the landowners?
So all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Any opposed?
So the motion passes.
And I would like to apologize to you guys for your work on the procedures. This is my first time doing this. So.
You're done. Okay.
Can we add me now? And then do this?
Yes. And Mr. Chairman, if we could please add a report by the treasurer at this time, and then the item number 19 on the landowners agenda is public input. So if you have the treasurer's report given before public input is received, then the landowners will know everything we have to offer to them.
Okay.
Before
At this,
public.
at this time, we'd like to entertain having the treasurer's report read.
Okay, I did provide a copy of the treasurer's report on the back, and it's also on the website. In accordance with the statute, we have to report the amount of monies that were received in the district during the year, the amount that was paid out of the district, and the beginning and ending amounts in the treasury as of today. So, for the fiscal year ending 9/30/2022, as of this date, the amount of monies received in the district is $1,188,282. That includes all tax revenues, use and connection permit fees, and reimbursements, gate remote fees, any money that came in. The amount of money that was paid out of the district in the last fiscal year as of today was $1,091,088. And I did also provide you with a report that shows the income and expenses, so that should anyone have any questions as to where that $1,091,000 went, you'd be able to look at that report and tell. The beginning fund balance that was audited by the Tuscan CPA firm this year was $956,018. The unaudited balance that we have right now in the funds balance is $1,053,212. So we did accomplish the goal of putting $50,000 aside into the contingency funds that was set forth in the budget from last year. This completes the treasurer's report. Any questions? Right. Yes,
When will the loans be paid off? What's the date when we'll be done with that?
the loan maturity is August 1st, 2025, but we fully expect to have that paid off in February of 2024. Yes.
Chris, where's the tree work needs to be done in the swales? Where is that included, the expenses?
Any tree work would be in the drainage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Is that, what percentage of that is that the 98,000, that was the,
Are you talking about what was paid this year?
sure.
You were asking for a percentage of the total budget?
Just a drainage.
The drainage? At 98,000 on $1 million, I'd say that's about 10%, roughly.
Is that covered by the tree folks?
Covered by the tree folks.
Well, the tree work needs to be done.
That's that includes the tree work, the spraying. That would be the biologist for the filter swamps.
Okay.
Trying to think what else. If we had any other works done in the drainage this year, I don't think we did. Swale work. If we had some swale work for the engineering.
We didn't really have any in the past year. We've got some upcoming for the future.
Yeah. We have added to it for drainage for this next fiscal year a significant amount of money.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What is the current acreage cost that goes to the district per year? It's so much per acre. Is that correct?
Are you asking about the assessment?
Yes.
It's 547.03 per acre. Is the 2022-2023 assessment.
Okay.
Last year it was 455.67.
And for next year.
That's the maintenance assessment, not the CIP
Correct.
phase 1.
Yeah. And for next year, what would the proposed
It's
amount?
$547.03 for next year.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may also mention, if any landowner has an interest in the future of also knowing about the budget summaries, we will be adopting resolutions that will be placed on the website related to the adoption of the budget and the assessment rates for the upcoming fiscal year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that information will also be on the website after today.
Thank you. Peter?
I just had some questions about, just looking at the expansion of.
Before you continue, we had asked for everybody to use a mic because the people in the back of the room can't hear.
No, that was not working.
Oh, no, I just was looking at the estimated expense total expansion from last fiscal year to this fiscal year, and I was just wondering if you could do a very, very brief summary of what line items are driving that. I mean, 8% is pretty much in line with inflation, but I'm wondering if that's sort of a padded estimate, or is that all bid out and locked in, and what's driving that extra 80,000 or what is it?
We have a number of areas around the perimeter roads and stuff that are currently not just totally washed out, but we have some washouts that are going to have to be repaired. The only way that this district, correct me if I'm wrong, but gets any additional tax revenue is we have a flat rate tax system. So we have to add it on. Whereas your fire districts, cities, and things like that all have a millage rate system. Anytime a new house is built, they get more money. Anytime inflation goes up, they get more money. The only way that this taxing district here gets any additional money is to add it in a percentage rate. And you will see that reflected whenever we have our annual landowners meeting. The cost of maintenance for the mowing of the ditches, the fuel went up. I think Tony's asking for an additional $15,000 this year. Gerald has a percentage rate added on to his. We're going to try to do some bidding and stuff to try to make sure we're correct on the amounts of money that we're spending for the services that we have. to make sure they're in line. But for that, that's why we have to have the additional money into the budget this year. Yes.
I just want to say something about the swale mowing. The mowing, I've lived here for 30 years, as has a few of us. And there's so many homes out there now that mow their own swales. My daughter lives on Cock Robin. Her swales have not been mowed in months. And they're asking for more money, but they're not mowing the swales.
You said on Cock Robin?
My daughter lives on Cock Robin. My swales don't get mowed unless my landscaper mows them.
Okay.
If you come down I live on Rhodus. Any of these roads are not mowed anymore. And I mean, I know that there's a thing about getting people to mow, but we're paying him. I don't know if everybody here knows that he gets $10,000 a month to mow.
We know that.
Yeah, well, maybe the homeowners.
and
There's
if you
so many
take-
new homeowners that don't know, and they mow their own ditches.
And if you take the number of lots out here, divide that into his budget, or the budget we have for doing that service, you'll find out that you're paying approximately, give or take, $250 a year for that service.
But how many of those are mowed by him, and how many are mowed by the homeowners?
Well, I can tell you this, I not only have I own a number of houses on Henson Drive. I mow
I'm
mine,
sure your lots are mowed.
I mow mine,
And he
I
mows
take
his
care
own.
of them, and I manicure them,
Exactly.
but for years, I've taken my lawnmower and cut down the street a little further. And those are things in the upcoming year, we're gonna be taking a look at, and seeing what exactly, and doing surveys on what's being done, what it's gonna cost. The same thing with our other services that we have going on. It's not been done in the past, and I do appreciate your comment.
That's what I feel like. I mean, there's many homeowners who mow their own ditches.
Well-
Maybe they would want to take that on, and I know it has to be done as part of the managed. But if you look at a lot of the ditches, they're especially around where the culverts are, they're not mowed. And how does the water flow?
I do agree with you on some
I
of
know he's
that.
asking for a raise, but maybe he's got to do a better job. with a raise.
I know that this year, Tony has gone through some trials and errors with the maintenance, getting parts for his lawnmowers, maintaining.
If we want to maintain our own ditches, can we get a rebate on our tax money?
That's something we'll have to discuss at a later time, but.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, could we get the members of the public or the landowners to state your name for the record before you start? So if we could get your name.
Dennis DeRocchio.
And there was the gentleman earlier.
Peter DeBaz.
Hey, Peter, before you leave, would you make sure that we have your name spelled correctly?
I'm Dorothy Lauber, and I was wondering, the mower this past month ran over our plastic culvert and damaged it. And whose responsibility for that culvert that was damaged to pay for it? You know, I don't want someone to come to me and say, "Oh my God, the culvert's all ripped up there. You're going to owe us $7,000, but I didn't damage it."
Okay, as the chair, I would tell you that if something happens on your property and by either a delivery truck or by the mowing services or whatever, it's your responsibility to call us right away and let us know that something happened. We have no way to document things months down the road from it. So
Okay.
if you would do that, then we'll send somebody out right away to check it and document what's going on with it. And then you would be in a better position to get something done and taken care of with it, okay?
Okay, so do I take pictures? What do I document? To Chris? What do I document?
Well, you need to document it, let us know your address. One of us will come out and take a look at it and that sort of thing. So how long ago did this happen?
Oh, about 3 weeks ago.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just clarify, any contact with the district should initially be made with the district's office. If you look on the website, there's a phone number for the district's office. And in addition, contact with the supervisors can also be made, but to make sure there is an official record of the contact, please contact the district office on the phone number or on the email the email address is indicated on the website.
Yeah, I didn't actually say that, but the assumption was they were going to call Chris. Okay. So. Okay, are we ready to move forward? Yes.
I'm Matt Holmes. At the last meeting, there were several people, me included, who were not happy with the fixed fee schedule that was authorized to Morris Depute for the driveway connections. Was anything ever followed up on in that regards?
But the only answer I can give you for that is we make those decisions at the board meetings, and this is the next meeting coming up in a few minutes. So I can tell you that as of right now, we have not discussed anything further on that.
But is it on your agenda?
Is that on the agenda, Chris? It is not on the agenda.
Okay, am I the only one who's still upset about that?
Matt, I don't recall the question last month. So what exactly is the question?
No, that this was, I don't recall the last meeting where you guys were elected.
A year ago?
Last year.
A year ago.
A year ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Discussed a lot of it.
There's been a lot of water under that bridge.
Yeah.
So what's the question? I'm sorry.
There's a set permit fee.
I'm sorry?
What's the question?
What's, she
Well,
wants
I
to
mean,
know
that's obvious price gouging when you consider that the actual cost was something like $1,200 at the most for that work.
what are we at?
I think what you're addressing is there's a set permit application fee, and
No,
then
they had
an
exclusive
okay,
contracts.
I'm getting there. So then there was the one individual that was the contractor slated.
Yes.
Okay, so we opened that up for bids, and now there's how many? 3 or 4 that you can choose
Maybe
from.
5 or 6.
Yeah, so now you can go as a homeowner and negotiate yourself with that individual. So it's not a monopoly of just one person. You have a choice now of the people that have submitted their applications and are part of the district
Right.
as far as being the ones able to do that.
Except I wrote a check to Morris Depute, not to the contractor.
That was a couple years ago, though, right?
Yes.
That was the
process
old-
has changed.
Yeah, the
That's all
process.
check-
We
that's all
changed that
changed.
process
Okay.
within the year for sure.
It was changed before
They fired the engineer.
last year
Correct.
Well, I mean, that's
when you came on. Yeah.
Different engineer, he's gone.
that's progress, but, you know.
Well, your question was, did we respond to your questions a year ago? And yes, we did. And we've given you opportunities and options outside of one person. And unfortunately for you, that probably didn't work out very well. And I think that that we got caught up in the same thing in the earlier years, and anybody who owned property years ago all got caught up in it. But it doesn't, that doesn't change what we do today.
Well, I appreciate everyone's efforts in making those changes, and then firing the engineer, and I guess they got away with it, but not forever.
Well, the term firing isn't, I don't know that it's really appropriate.
Or changed.
The board has the opportunity to change the services as needed or as they want to, and we elected to change.
Okay, well, thank you for.
Mr. Chairman, if I may also clarify that the new process for acquiring a permit for driveway connection, and also the process for the construction being performed by the landowner, all that's on the website now. So if you have more questions about it, you can look there. But the essence of the new process, where the old process has been replaced completely under the new process, you can make the application for the driveway connection, and you can provide the name of the contractor that you want to use to do the work for the driveway connection, and then the engineer reviews the contractor's qualifications and then approves them to do the work, and then you can proceed and use your contractor. That's pretty significant.
So you mean there's not a limit then? You can use any contractor as long as they get approved?
Yes, sir. That's the new program. There was at one time there was a change. At one time, there was only one contractor, and then there was a request made for other contractors who might want to do the work, and the list was created of multiple contractors who could perform the work. And then the process was further expanded and modified to say that a landowner could submit the name of their proposed contractor, and once the engineer says, yes, they are qualified to do the work, then they could perform the work for you. So we've opened it. It has been opened. The process has been modified to open that list as much as possible to qualified.
There's still an inspection of
Yes.
this?
Yes.
Yes.
Any other comments?
Miss,
In the back?
Does the board feel that, I don't have any microphone. Does the board feel that if the process for the contractor to be approved, maybe the homeowners don't know this, but there's a 130-page access standard handbook that they have to meet. So I feel that might be one of the possibilities why we have such a low turnout of contractors that are willing to put a bid in to do work within the district. I think if we maybe streamline that down a little bit, it would be more feasible for more contractors to submit bids into the district, and in turn, homeowners would end up getting a better price. So that just might be a possibility for the board to look at in the future. And if they didn't know that, the homeowners, it is a 130-page packet that they have to go by to be approved to work within the district.
Was that developed by the engineer?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, I'm not aware of any contractors who have applied for approval that have been denied by the engineer. I appreciate the fact that the packet may be a pretty large packet, Mr. Gallagher, but the reality is I'm not aware of any contractor that's been refused to do work. Now,
They're not even going to put in for it. What I'm
well,
trying to say.
I guess.
If I'm a contractor and I see a 130-page standard document,
Sure.
why would I want to go through that hassle when I can go over here and get a 2 or 3 page approval packet with my references and be done?
Yes, sir.
So,
I think it's, as much as I appreciate your comment, the reality is that there is a balancing the board has to complete of opening the door as much as possible, which is what they have done to allow as many different contractors to do the work as they can, and at the same time have some control, some criteria that the contractors have to meet in order to perform the work. And I think that's been accomplished. There have been a number of changes that have occurred to accomplish that. And if anybody, Mr. Chairman, I would say if anybody has any further comment or questions, by all means let us know. The board will consider, has been open to consider ideas.
Yeah, just a response back to Mr. Gallagher. The board has made numerous changes based on the advice and input from the landowners. So at this point, we're going to be where we are until we have a reason to make a different change on that. Yes, ma'am.
So, as a
Your name?
homeowner, I'm Janice Drobio, and I'm also a contractor for the culverts. It's not a 130-page application because I've done it.
Thank you.
And the most thing is that you have to have the insurance, which is what the board needs, and a lot of contractors don't have the kind of insurance that we carry. It's $1 million or maybe $2 million. I'm not sure we work for numerous, but that's the biggest thing is where a lot of contractors aren't coming in with that kind of insurance that the board can, So, and I don't remember ever being 130-page. Yeah, I think it was only maybe like a 10-page application. But again, most of it is contractors have to be licensed. They have to have the correct insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what weeds out, some of the people.
Thank you very much for your input.
And it's about, if I remember correctly, maybe a 5-page to 7-page application, I think is what it is.
The application is, yes, but it says in the application that they have to meet the standards in the access handbook, which is 130 pages. That's what I was referencing. But thank you for your input.
Just make one comment regarding the gentleman in the back, Mr. Gallagher. What I think could happen is when Mr. Enfield comes back with a better, more streamlined process for how people apply for the permits, we can ask them to review this process, and if it can be improved upon from an engineering perspective, more streamlined, then I think the landowners have that right to hear if he can find a way to make it more efficient. So I don't think there's an answer yet to your question, but I think there's a possible solution that might even improve this more than it has been improved in the last year.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, just a clarification. So I heard two different things today. So when I asked about the budget and if the application fees are both as
We need your name.
Dave made it. They're booked as income to the water district, but now I heard this gentleman say that he was writing checks to
In the past.
So right. So can you
That was
comment?
2 years ago, two or more years ago.
And you made the change because that was not consistent with good accounting practices, or what was that?
The board several years ago created a process to simplify what they thought would simplify and streamline the culvert process by having designated contractor. When they put it out for a bid and they only got one, but having a designated contractor do the work. It went through Morris Depew, paid the bid. The check went to Morris Depew to pay it, and because of that, people were very upset because they felt there was a monopoly. And so the board then later changed it to open it up to additional contractors. So once they changed that, then we went back to the homeowner dealing with their contractor directly, paying their contractor directly for the culvert work being performed on their land. And then the only thing being given to the district was the actual use and connection permit fee, which was payable to the district. So any other fees associated with that construction was paid to the contractor and not to Morris Depew, not to the district,
Okay.
by the landowner.
But is it the board's view that it's okay, though, to charge landowners for these things, but have the check written to a third party? That seems to violate something.
Again, that's not what's happening now.
It's not happening now, but you said the reason you changed is another reason. I'm just saying, my thought is that from a narrow accounting perspective, that shouldn't have happened, regardless of the monopoly and all that. That's my point. And
It's a use
because
and
it
connection
reviews-
fee.
No.
There's no point in answering that question.
The auditor reviewed the budget and approved the activities that had occurred in the past. And then the auditor has also, and a new auditor is actually now been hired by the district, and they have their criteria. We're satisfying those criteria, so everything is booked properly. And even in the new process, we're booking them properly. But the big change that has occurred is instead of the district being paid by the homeowner for the construction work to be performed for the driveway connection, now the homeowner pays their contractor directly. And so the only part paid to the district now is the permit application fee to cover the engineer's cost to review the permit application and to perform the inspections of the work performed by the property owner's contractor.
What is that fee?
$750. And it has not been changed in many years.
Yeah.
So just, I think, in my opinion, $750 is an obscene fee for a permit for some of these things. So,
To come out and inspect.
It's use and connection fee, and it's their engineering on it, and then their inspection. So it's actually pretty cheap.
Yeah.
You know, David, we have reviewed that and looked at it and tried to decide whether to lower it.
Affordable.
By time, sometimes they come out and if they don't, the permit doesn't pass, they have to come back again, over and over again, depending on what the contractor has done. The fee is set at that so that your neighbors, people who are not putting down a culvert, don't have to pay the engineering firm for doing the inspection. So it's hard to, when it comes to be that amount of money, it really is to keep you from having to pay for my culvert inspections.
Right, but this is all improvements in the rights of way.
This is the improvements on your personal property to get a culvert into your driveway.
And
That was your question, wasn't it?
right, but it's culverts and other work, right? What?
Any work to be performed in the district's right of way requires a approval by the district through that permit process. That's one of the discussions recently. Yes, so that any work to be done in the district right of way requires a permit from the district. Yes, sir. And that requires the district engineer to do a review of the work to be performed. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or public input? Yes, sir. We'll need you to get a microphone.
Where are we at with the Tuck Road?
What's your name?
access?
Name?
Steve Parrish.
Steve Parrish.
The Tuck Road access, where are we at with that?
Tuck Road access, native fence.
Oh, I don't understand your question. That's where we're at.
Well, we've spent about, how many thousands of dollars trying to get access through Tuck Road again?
Well, currently that has been being discussed. Mr. Nagy, who owns the property, happens to be here today, but it's something that we're working on, trying to come to a resolution with, and that has not happened yet. But we're trying not to spend any more money on it than we have to do at the time.
How much have we spent already?
I couldn't even begin to tell you that because that goes way back in the history of the San Carlos Estates Water Control
What
District.
about our treasurer? She should know that, right?
Well, not being prepared for it,
Like over $100,000 at one time, correct?
I can't answer that one way or the other because I don't know the answer to that question.
We spent a lot of money on attorney's fees to try to gain access.
That answer, we
That
agree.
access should have been identified as a problem when the engineer did it the first time, right? Back and forth with you. Can we recover those attorney fees from Morris Dispute?
Bring up.
That's interesting.
I'm gonna leave that to the attorney to talk to.
That's an attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that really relates back to the original water control district plat that was recorded in the 1960s. And there was a mistake made on the plat, and this predates even the engineer, Morris Depew. There was a mistake made on the plat where the connection between Strike Lane on Tuck Road, from Strike Lane, Tuck, is it Strike Lane? Strike and Tuck. Okay, yeah, that from Strike going south on Tuck, there was a right-of-way, 60-foot right-of-way, and then it ended. And then south of there, it was not wide enough to allow the road to connect for Tuck Lane. And that was the problem that was created. It was litigated before I became counsel for the district. It was litigated, and with the prior landowner, not Mr. Nettie. And that case may have generated the fees that you are speculating may have occurred. I don't know what that number was. I was not counsel then. That particular litigation has been extinguished. The property owner has sold now to Mr. Nettig, and the current status is we're in the process of discussing with Mr. Nettig about a solution. I call it a dog leg problem. There's a little square of land that the district does not own, and the acquisition of that land by the district would allow Tuck Lane to be completed, but we don't own it, and so you can't build on what you don't own.
When the engineer drew up his plan for this road paving and drainage project, should he have caught that?
I, again, was not here at that time. That was done back in the early 2000s. I believe what the engineer did at that time as a part of that bonding process, and that's what happened was there was a request made to the judge, to a court here in Lee County, to approve the issuance of the bond. It's a bond validation action. And at that time, it's my understanding that the engineer laid out the roadways within the district boundaries, and those roadways stopped. And if you go now to the property that Mr. Nettig owns, you'll see Tuck Lane from the south, coming up from the south, the pavement comes up and stops abruptly. And that's the end of the district's right-of-way. And then it comes down from Strike Lane to the south, and is paved there as well, but the connection is not present. I understand your question, and maybe the idea is maybe somebody's at fault for that. But the reality is it was a situation that was created way back in the very beginning of the creation of the district with the water control plat that was created then.
So can I comment? So I bought this property for the 4 parcels in 2021, and I did not know about any of this stuff. So there's been discussions about how to use those perimeter roads. And by the way, the website lists perimeter roads of Bonitaville and Mariah. Does not list Tuck. I'm sure that's an oversight. You might want to check. So I'm curious. So we're trying to resolve this in the best interest of the community, the district, the ward. So the people maintaining the canals have total access to it. That gate is not locked. The gate at Strike has a chain wrapped around it to make it look like it's locked to discourage people from.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to figure out, they spent all this money trying to gate it, and it's still sitting there with the gate on it. I was just trying to find out where that money went, and why we can't get it back.
And I'm trying to resolve it without spending my own money, without spending the board's money. And I don't have any problem with people walking through there. You're welcome to walk through, at least for now. So, but I do have an interest in maintaining my property rights, so I'm not willing to give it up. And like Mr. Pringle says, the right-of-way is not continuous. You have to do a little hopscotch to get through that road. And for that to be open to traffic, it would have to drive on my property, and that's not paved all the way to Strike. So look, this is very complicated, and
yeah,
it's
like I said, I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with spending a bunch of money that has been nothing.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Bridge in.
It's fair. Any other question?
Are there any other questions?
Motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn the landowners meeting?
Hang on a minute. Can I thought, so we're on 19, so I would just like to, sorry. So, Mr. Pringle wrote this letter attached to the notice for the landowners meeting, and I appreciate you being clear on what your intentions are. So again, in the interest of my property rights, and I think it affects everybody in here, I just like to read this one sentence which troubles me. So when the district was created in 1969, the drainage and road right-of-ways in the district were established, and an easement for the district right-of-ways was created, dedicated in favor of the district that is superior to everyone else's rights-of-way areas. So I don't deny the right-of-way, but I find this language to be quite broad, very broad, and I would. So, doing a little research, there is I have copies of this if anybody wants it. House Bill 1159 was signed by the governor in 2021, which establishes Florida Property Owner Bill of Rights. And there's 7 of them, including the right to exclude others from your property, the right to dispose of your property, the right to due process, the right to just compensation for property taken for a public purpose. So if you want again, your right of way is for maintaining district improvements, and there's no argument there. I would say that, am I allowed to make a motion? Since this is a landowners meeting?
No, sir, but if you want to come back to the Board of Supervisors meeting and ask them to take action, that would be the appropriate way.
Okay, so just a potential solution, so at least put some limit, there are no qualifications, no limitations on that sentence saying that your rights in those right-of-ways are superior to my rights. So just to be absurd, if you decided to put a food truck or a Starbucks drive-through on my culvert, you could do that based on this language itself.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, well, that's how I read it.
Okay.
So let me just tell you, so I
Sure.
don't accept this sentence. And I urge everybody else to not accept this sentence as is.
So let me clarify, if I may, Mr. Mayor. The district was created for a purpose, and the district's authority rises from that purpose statement, the reason it was created, and also from Florida law related to water control districts. That's Chapter 298. The law that you made reference to about the homeowner's Bill of Rights relates to the ability to control your lot, your property, but subject to any prior created easements, any prior created rights of way. And in this particular case, the district does not have the ability to come onto your property and build anything, but within the right-of-way that was created back in the 1960s, the right-of-way of the district that was created back in the 1960s, the district does have the ability to control uses that occur of the right-of-way property, even by the underlying property owner. That's what I've talked about. That was the reason that I made that statement. So just like the district is not going to come put a Starbucks in their right-of-way because that's not within their authority under Chapter 298 or under the final judgment that created the district, the landowner does also not have the ability to go in the right-of-way and build a Starbucks either. So whatever you do in the right-of-way is subject to the district's approval. That might be a better way to interpret that sentence. And that was the intention of the sentence. I'm not saying that the district can come in and do anything they want to within the right-of-way. I'm saying the district can come in and do anything they want to within the parameters of the law, being Chapter 298, water control and the right-of-way control that they have. And in Chapter 298, if you look at the powers and authority of the district, there's a list of general powers and authority that the district has. And just to be a little lighthearted, there's not authority to build a Starbucks listed in Chapter 298.
Okay, so it would be good if that sentence reflected those limitations of 298, and actually 298 then refers to the water plan, the water district plan, which by the way is out of date. It's supposed to be done every 5 years. So we actually by law don't have a valid water control plan based on 298. So so I agree with Starbucks. I make an absurd example. But so for the gates, for example, they do not, in my opinion, infringe on the rights of way or any of the duties, responsibilities, or rights of the water district to maintain the improvements. So to me, that's a gray area that's causing a lot of dispute in the last year. So.
Mr. Chairman, I think that the sentence that is in the letter that says the district exclusively controls the uses and activities that occur within the district's right-of-way is an accurate statement. And that's why for any landowner to make any improvements in the district's right-of-way, you need to get the district's permission to do that. And we've talked about that before. So the landowner's rights within the area of the right-of-way is subject to the district's ability to say, no, sir, you cannot make a certain improvement in the district's right-of-way at the board's discretion, based upon the board's determination of whether it is consistent or inconsistent with the rights of the district to have a water control occur. So, and to protect the district's improvements in those right-of-ways. Part of what has been discussed in the past relates to the swale ditches, as an example. And there was quite a bit of discussion about the construction of improvements in the swale ditches and even mowing of the swale ditches. In some instances was a problem because the grass was being cut too short, or other activities were occurring that was allowing sand and soil to be exposed. And then when water comes and there's exposed soil, then that soil flushes through the system and turbidity and other things occur. So for that as an example, that is an example of the reason why the water control district controls the area within the right-of-way, ultimately to control and to provide proper water control and water conveyance through the district system. So I think the statements that I made were accurate. I appreciate the fact that you would like a clarification, and I hope the statements I have made are a clarification, but I believe the statements that I made with regard to the area within the right-of-way, within the district's right-of-way, is accurate. The district does have superior authority over activities that occur within that district right-of-way. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Okay, the word superior to all other rights and the rights of way, I find pretty offensive, actually. And just to let you know, so if there's any activity by the water district on any of my properties, I'm going to take any means necessary to prevent that from happening. So you better stay within the straight and narrow of this, out of the 298 and the water. Sorry.
Oh, absolutely. And that is the intention. And there's not an intention by the board or by me as legal counsel to authorize the district or to say to the district board that it is authorized to do anything beyond the parameters of the law and the authority, even back to the bond validation action, because that was the time, as an example, that's another document that would be good to review, because those bond validation final judgments indicated by a court of law the interpretation, as an example, the interpretation of the district's authority under Chapter 298 to perform work within the right-of-ways. And part of that bond validation action said that by the judge signed the final judgment, and it said that the district was authorized under the water control plan of the district, under Chapter 298 of the Florida statutes, the district was authorized to borrow money to perform the roadway, right-of-way construction, including the paving of the roadways. And so there's not only Chapter 298 that grants authority, generally and specifically. There's not only the final judgment that created the district that gives authority. There's not only the water control plan that describes the authority of the district, but there are also the two bond validation final judgments that confirm the proper interpretation of the district's authority as well within the district right-of-ways, but not beyond the district right-of-way.
Right, so just review recent history. So in August last year, you sent me a letter saying I was trespassing on my own property, which is the rights of way. Since then, I've been going to all these meetings, and landowner after landowner comes up here with pretty innocent, innocuous improvements. Things like a gate, things like bricks to keep their garbage can from rolling into the culvert, other things, and there's really no process to resolve this. We don't have a code and code enforcement that follows chapter 162. So the due process is kind of loose at best. So my point is that if you broaden, this statement stands, is very broad. Now you review everything that happens in those right-of-ways, even a couple bricks sitting on the grass, and now you require a permit to do that. And now how is that, those bricks, for example, or how does a gate interfere with the responsibilities that are, you're limited by 298. You can't do anything else other than what they're authorized. So, but there's been a scope creep to come and kind of harass, I would say, innocent landowners who are just trying to make innocuous improvements and don't infringe on water control. So I'm just saying, obviously there's a whole spectrum of things, and I'm just saying there's this just allows scope creep to just the continued harassment of landowners for just simple things that don't harm anything. That's my issue.
I'll be glad to respond if you would like me to.
Or the supervisors.
Yes, sir. So the striking of the balance of the responsibilities and authority, they go together, of the district to maintain and control water flow and to maintain the improvements made to the right-of-ways, because the landowners pay through the assessment process for the construction and maintenance of those improvements, including the roadway improvements. So the board has a responsibility to strike the balance between maintaining those and taking care of those right-of-ways, and also recognizing and to the greatest extent possible, allowing private property rights to exist, to coexist. And outside the district's right-of-ways, the district does not do or say anything to the landowner. So in full recognition of that other law that you made reference to, which frankly didn't add any authorities or rights, in my opinion, to the rights that homeowners already have in Florida. That was our government, our state government's intention to reiterate rights that you already have and to codify them all in one place. That's great, but you know what? You didn't get anything extra out of the passage of that law. It was a confirmation of the rights that you already had.
Wait a minute. So if we don't stand up for our rights, we're going to lose them. So I'm saying I'm keeping these rights, and everybody else needs to know that they have those rights. So that knowledge is helpful.
And absolutely. And I am a property owner's rights kind of a guy. And I don't know how long you've been in Florida, but my family has been here since 1802. So I have more of an interest in protecting property owners' rights in Florida than maybe anybody else in the room if you look at my history of being here. My point is this board and I don't have any desire to interfere with property owners' rights, private property owners' rights, but at the same time, the district's management of the assets and the right-of-ways, the assets constructed at district expense in the right-of-ways, is very important for the community as a whole. There's the striking of the balance, and they're not going to do anything that interferes with anything that you've talked about at all.
So I appreciate your respect for property rights, but with all due respect, your role here is as an advocate, not for me as a property owner, it's an advocate for the board. And so this is somewhat of an adverse, when a lawyer sends me a letter, I'm assuming there's an adversarial thing going on here. And so we're going to resolve this through that adversarial, and I'm going to push back, and you're going to push back, and we'll resolve this easily. I'm just saying that I'm standing my ground on these rights, and my interpretation of where that gray line is might be different than yours at times, and I think that's been proven.
But we'll work it out.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Okay, I see we have Brad at the back.
Yes. Should there be some type of just basic?
Hey, Brad, just a moment, please. Yeah, we're requesting that you do for everybody else, okay?
No problem. I'll be happy to oblige any request.
Thank you.
So my question would be this: should there not be some type of basic litmus test for this, so that if an application gets submitted to the board, the only reason that the board should really say no to that application should be if it negatively affects the water flow, control, or quality of the district. I mean, I have a personal offense when we get into this thing of just arbitrarily denying or approving things without really any basis for it. So if there's some type of process that you guys have and I don't know about it, I apologize. And I just think as homeowners that we have that right, and that this doesn't turn into an HOA. That it maintains the water control district, protecting the water flow and the water quality and the right of way to protect those assets.
The right of way.
We talked before about approving somebody's different types of mailboxes, and I think that's a great overstep of the responsibilities of the board.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm going to let Mr. Pringle just continue until he gets.
I would like to hear from the board.
Well, you're asking legal.
The answer, Mr. Gallagher, is I'm not aware of any arbitrary decision made by the board on that subject. The topic relates to the right-of-ways of the district, and within the boundaries of those right-of-ways, there are improvements constructed by the district and maintained by the district for the benefit of all of the property owners in the district. They are comprised of the swale ditches, but also the roads and the road surfaces and the paving and everything else that as I referenced earlier, in the bond validation actions, the court said were legitimate improvements of the district. They could be constructed by the district using assessment revenue of the property owner. So all those improvements that were the subject of the bond validation actions, including the roadway improvements, are district improvements that have to be maintained by the district and that are subject to the control of the district. That there is not an intention to exercise that arbitrarily. There's never been an action that I have seen by the board as I have been their counsel where there was an arbitrary decision made. There has been discussion about mailboxes. I don't remember the board saying you could only put up a certain kind of mailbox, but I do remember the board saying and the engineer saying certain layouts of mailbox stands might have an impact on the swale ditch and or turbidity and or runoff and or et cetera, so that the board said, okay, if you want to construct something in the right of way, then make an application for whatever it is, and there will be a simple review process, as I recall, made of that request if the impact is minimal. The bottom line being, if you're going to do something in the right of way, make application, and ultimately the board, first line by the way of review is the engineer, and then the second line of review, and even as the documentation is set up, the engineer can approve requests for the placement of improvements in the right of way. If the engineer says, maybe there's a request to do something that's outside the norm, I'm going to let the board make this decision. Or if the engineer says maybe some conditions need to be attached to the approval of the request, I'm going to let the board make this decision. Then it comes to the board. But otherwise, the engineer generally has authority to approve most requests. that are made. So there's a process in place, and it's not an arbitrary process. I understand everybody has an opinion, and opinions differ. I don't believe the process is arbitrary. I don't believe that it is overreaching. I don't believe it interferes with landowners' rights, as indicated by Mr. Nettie. We can disagree. The district is created for the benefit of all the landowners equally in the district. The district is operated and functions for the benefit of all the landowners of the district. And as a part of that, each landowner gives up a little bit of the control that they have in the district right-of-ways only, not on the rest of your property. If we were in a homeowners association, even the color of your house paint would be controlled by the association. And there's nobody sitting on this board who will tell you what color you need to paint your house.
How wide is that zone from the road? Because it obviously, Wayne Zimmer, do I need a microphone?
Yeah, Wayne, if we can get the microphone brought up front of one of them, please. And I'd like to take a minute and say something before you start.
Okay.
As the chair, I realize this meeting seems to be going on forever, and there's a lot of discussion going on from individuals here. This is the annual landowners meeting, and I'm trying not to cut anybody short. This is the one time a year you get to come here and we have to sit here, okay? So if other people think we're sitting here for a long period of time and not moving forward, that's why I'm not calling for people to move forward at this time, okay? So I just want to let you all know that. Perfect.
Yeah, Wayne Zimmer. I think that I'm just curious, how far does the right of way extend onto your property? If you're not on the ends, like just in the middle, like past the swale, how far past the swale, roughly?
Generally speaking, the right-of-way is 60 feet wide from the center of the road.
Center of the road.
From the center of the road, from the crown of the road, the way it should have been designed, the crown of the road, so that any water runoff goes to this side of the swale, to that side of the swale. From that point on, you then measure 30 and 30, 60 total.
60 feet wide total, 30 feet from the center line on each side.
Okay. So it seems like there's a confusion, like people think that they can do, like they own that right-of-way area. Or at least there's some confusion of that.
We do.
No, you don't own the right-of-way area. That's why it's a right-of-way. Well, you may own it, but you don't control it. Now, to me, that means you don't own it. So I kind of look at it that way. But I think if everybody looked at it that way, and there's some sense to it. You know, I'm a total freedom guy as a general rule, you know, but there does need to be a right-of-way area to maintain the whole system. Right? Everyone agrees with that?
No, that's why it exists.
I mean, that's why it exists. So doing whatever you want in that right-of-way area, you know, it can't disrupt the maintenance of the system. Correct?
I happen to agree with you. I happen to own a property that's also got a power line easement going down the side of it.
Right.
I can't build a building. I can't park cars in that and block it from them.
Exactly.
I have to provide that for them.
Right. So, and I don't think that there's any overstep until rules started being placed beyond the right of way, right? Which is what homeowners associations can do.
Yeah, the board cannot.
Right.
We
You guys
can only do
can't
one
do
function.
that. Right.
But it
That
can't
is
do
my-
anything, right? It doesn't have carte blanche to do whatever they want.
Well, they in a sense have superiority. No, there's limitations. You said that there are limitations on what they can do, but you can't do whatever you want on that property either, right?
Yes.
So I mean, in a sense, there's fences put up there in some of those easements. I mean, why were they approved?
There were gates that were installed. Yes,
Yeah,
by the
why
district.
are there gates? I mean, unless did the homeowners apply to have those gates put in and they were okay?
That is my understanding. That predates me,
Okay.
but it's my understanding that back, and it occurred back at the time when the bonds were validated and the road improvements were made, when the paving occurred in the early 2000s, and at that time, before that, the uses of the roadways was different. At the time that the paving project occurred and the improvements to the roadway and the swale ditches were improved, and all of those right-of-ways were improved. Again, for water flow purposes.
Right.
But, I mean, even the roads were paved for that purpose because the pavement on the roads reduces turbidity that goes into the swale ditches, and the reduction of the turbidity in the swale ditches reduces the turbidity that goes into the canal. So it's all connected to water control, ultimately connected to water control.
Right, so one other clarification about these right-of-ways. So you have a right-of-way, right? What are the rights of the other landowners in the whole development to access right-of-way areas? I mean, can we walk along the canals even if they cross his property? Because it's right-of-way, because it's, controlled by the board and it's right-of-way. I mean, do other people in here have the right to walk along those?
If the board says you do, then yes, sir.
But
That's
my-
part of the control that the board could exercise. So the board could say, this
Will
is
allow.
open to any subdivision, anybody who owns land in the district can access any part of the district right-of-ways. The board could say that.
Have they?
That's your legal opinion.
Have they said that? Because I don't know that that's actually right, but, or if I even agree with that. Is that the standard? I mean, is that the rule now?
Well, is my understanding, only as history goes, and Judy Tappel happens to be here, but that walking on the perimeter roads is acceptable and was supposed to be provided for. As far as vehicles go, that was ruled out a long time ago. So that's my understanding of it, and am I correct on that?
Yes, sir. That's
Okay, so-
as far as historically, I believe that is accurate.
And so when they put up the gates between each road back then, that was an area provided for being able to walk along, and for people to walk around the outside perimeters. Prior to that, we used to be able to drive around the outside, but in the road project, that got cut off. So that's just my understanding of it.
Okay, so it's not, so we do have that right to walk across those perimeters? What do you think? I mean, are you okay with us walking across as long as if we're in the right, which is a certain distance from the canal, is that okay with you?
You can walk on my property, but with my permission. So if the board decides anybody can walk on my property, I'm asserting my rights to say no. Right? I can still give you permission. I don't think the board has the right, and you can have that opinion. And I looked up the Attorney General's opinion, and I researched what those properties look like. I don't agree with you, and I'm not going to give up my right to give access if I want or don't want. And there was a gentleman here last month who said, no, I don't want somebody walking for whatever reason. And that's not my opinion for my property, but I 100% respect his right to say, no, I don't want people walking through my property. That's my view.
He's a unique circumstance because he has a portion, correct?
Everybody has the same circumstance, because if you live on an end road.
If you're not using a microphone, we
Okay.
cannot hear you.
I kind of just think that this should be worked
So the
out.
common sense part is if you have an in-law.
Can you give us your name, please?
My name's Jason McCormick, live in Woodville.
Thank you.
I don't have an in-law, so can you guys raise your hand if you have an in-law in here? In-law, end of the
You have an
street,
easement.
you have an in-law. Where you actually pay for acre and a quarter, you get half of that as your property, the rest of it's easement, for a ditch or a so-called road,
Right away. District right away.
or right away to clean your ditches.
District right away.
District right away to clean the ditches for water flow. So why can't a person at an in-law put a fence up, give the district a key, or leave it unlocked? Why does anybody in this neighborhood even walk through her yard? Can you tell me?
You know what? That was done long before I became on the board.
I'm asking you three.
Well, I can't answer that question today.
We've maintained that you can continue to use it as an active pedestrian traffic. And then most of the gates that were done previously with Ms. Tapley and the prior board were up to a fire hydrant to eliminate the ability to have vehicle traffic.
I can tell you the fire truck is going to park next to a fire hydrant on a dirt road next to the canal.
You can do what?
They're not going to park a fire hydrant on a dirt road next to a canal on fire.
They're all.
Well, I've been a firefighter for 33 years, and I'll disagree with you on that.
I promise you.
And we have a house being built right now down near the center gate, and Brad owns it. and that fire hydrant was right next to his house. You gonna tell me the fire truck's not coming down there to put out the fire?
If the road is up to code, they'll park a truck out there. They're not gonna pump a fire hydrant on a dirt road next to the canal when the truck falls over. Anyways, the question I'm asking is, who in this room thinks they need to walk through Julie's backyard to go look at a ditch? Unless you're cleaning the ditch. So you raise your hand? The question I have is.
Question of fish.
Huh?
I like walking around.
Well, then you ask her, hey, can I walk through your ditch and fish? You're a neighbor. You need, who in this room feels they need to walk?
Well, I guess the real question is whether or not they have to ask.
Yeah.
And that's a question for the attorney and the legal part of it all. And you're asking this board to sit here and tell the people who may have a right to do that, not to do it.
So I believe.
And I don't know that comes under our jurisdiction.
It's an easement for cleaning the ditch for water flow. And you're misconstruing it as, hey, the whole neighborhood needs to walk through her yard or his yard to go fish.
Well, the roads appear
To go look at birds. You walk down the road and get birds. What are you
they
gonna do?
appear to have names on them and they're called roads. And if you go to Benita Bill, they're paved most of that today. And
I can't drive a golf cart down there. It's not a road. It's not a road.
on the part that's paved, you can.
Some road, we all know the story. They had houses there, but they didn't pay the roads that cost so much money to run a road that was small. So the question I have is.
So the decision was made to take away the rights of the people along Benita Bill because we didn't want to pave the road through that swamp area.
20 years ago, there was
That's what
nothing
you're-
on this swamp. It cost so much money.
But the question is really the same.
The question we're asking is, who in this room, I'm looking at all you guys, we're all landowners here together. Who in this room feels the need that you walk through Brad's yard, because he just wants to put a fence up. It's elephant out of the room, you want to put a fence up. You guys can all laugh, but that's the question in the room, you want to put a fence up, to walk around.
Well, I think you know, we're listening to all the input of the community and as homeowners ourselves, and there was, you know, the representation of doing a gate, but making it over a little bit so if somebody wanted to pass through because they had permission to, you know, fish or do whatever, but yeah, proportion of it so that we get through it.
I put in a gate request 5 times.
And we voted to table it to the October meeting.
Why we table for it? Here's your mic.
Because we've had.
But my gate needs,
I'd like to table it.
it's pedestrian friendly gate. So everything that the board is up here saying that they want to have access for people to walk through and stuff, I'm 100% with it. It's even in the engineer plan. It's been in the engineer plan. So there's a dedicated section that's never closed. It's open for people to walk through, bike through, ride a horse through, jog through, rollerblade through, whatever you want to. You want to come look through fish, do whatever you want. It's not a problem. All I'm trying to do is prevent the traffic from coming down because I paid for the gravel and everything to be on my section of Moriah right here. I don't think people from Busybody Street should be driving up and down my property in front of my property that have been there more times than my own family members have. I mean, give me some little bit of privacy on my own property, for God's sake, is all I'm asking for.
Well, you know, Brad, if you remember the way this all started, and you would have had to pave that road to the road standards.
Yes,
because
the water control district wanted me to pave through a swamp. The
Because
water control district, this board, previous board, and he'll attest to that, wanted me to build a road through the wetland. A water control district.
and that was to put it on your property at the time. And I defended that, and you know that.
Yes.
But now today, you're trying to take away the rights of the people who can walk down that road.
What right am I taking away by having a gate with a dedicated 3-foot section for someone to walk through? Tell me what right I'm taking away.
So then you agree that people can walk and go around the outside perimeter roads?
For my section, yes. I've already made that perfectly clear in the gate application 5 times now, but yet it still has not been approved. And I would like to know why. If it isn't something arbitrarily that we're making decisions on just because we want to.
No decision.
So as far as I know, the board has not decided to open up all the perimeter roads for walking, biking, horses, right? If you do that, I have an idea, okay? If you say that your rights per 298 include opening this thing up to whoever, and I get the March of Dimes running through here every month, I got a problem with that. So here's my idea. So if you want to put signs up to say this is a path that's open to the public for $1 a year, I'll I'll give you the rights to put that sign and open that up. Now you get what you want. I get almost I get no money, but I get to retain the right to say no. Because if this thing gets out of control next year, guess what? I can say this isn't working out. I got horses pooping on me, or I got mini bikes running through there. So anything can happen once you put those signs up. And I'm not willing to give up my right to say yes. Let me say yes to the community. I don't want you to take the property from me and then say yes to the property. That's it.
Is there any other discussion?
Yes, Jason.
Jason McCormick again. The question I have is this right away. If you let the whole community walk through somebody's yard, somebody trips and falls or gets bit by her dog.
Talk about this.
Same thing if they walk down our roads, fall in our ditches, trip over a culvert pipe.
She can't fence her property in for her dog. This whole thing is about fences.
If you look around the perimeter roads today, you'll see that a number of people have put fences up adjacent to the perimeter road.
He wants to put a fence in, he keeps saying that for 5 months straight.
A gate.
Good point.
Who's got the extra microphone?
It's just simple. All I want to say. Didn't this?
No, it's right here.
This one?
No, who's got the mic?
It's up there. By Mr. Trent.
There it is.
Oh.
I got
There
you go.
Thank you.
Oh, Jason.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It was just a simple
What's your name?
What's your name?
I'm Doug Chu. Didn't this thing all start about a year ago? We started talking about money. Who is responsible for cleaning the canals? Property owners that own this property you're talking about. Are they paying for the canals being cleaned? Or are we all doing it? Who had access to that property? The roads. They are supposedly roads. If they're not roads, give it back to the damn owners. They can clean the canals. Wasn't there talk about that at one point, not too long ago? Who in the hell's cleaning the canals? Who has right to get on that property to clean the canals? The district cleans it. I mean, I don't remember exactly what was talked about, but I just remember something about that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I think my statement earlier was responsibility and authority go together. That's essentially what
I'm totally bogus. I live on
agree.
Busy Bee at the end on one of these scandalous roads. And I think it's important to remember that the district's job is to control the flow, maintain the flow, the water quality, all of that. So people walking on these roads or doing other things on these roads truly have no impact or any association with that. When I bought my property in 2007, it was right at the end of the capital improvement project. And one of the stipulations when we bought our property, we had young children and we were concerned about that road. And we were given a letter by Morris DePue, the engineer at the time. I still have the letter and I'm happy to furnish it to anybody who would like to see it. That stated they would be putting gates at the end of all the hammerheads. Well, I guess at the time the board decided to save money. So instead of putting gates at the end of all the hammerheads, they put them in the middle. So it allowed more access. Now, I've lived there since 2007, and in the years I've lived there, people walk through my backyard. It's not the end of the world. Do I love it? No. I don't know why anybody would want to walk through somebody else's backyard, but hey, to each their own. But I've sat in my yard, and I've watched people try to run over, like kids on motorbikes, try to run over my dog. I've watched it. I've seen things that you just wouldn't believe. I've seen people just come and park on the end of these roads and sleep, kids doing who knows what. I mean, I've called the cops so many times. They don't necessarily do it on my side because it looks lived in, but on the opposite side, it's wooded and nobody goes there. So I've called the cops so many times because of suspicious vehicles just sitting there. So it's really more a issue of safety for our neighborhood as well, because this is going on. I mean, there was a robbery suspect at one point that got caught by the cops, But I think
my issue more than anything is that this isn't an HOA. The board is here to guide and the control of water and what have you. And I don't see how we're getting into, if somebody wants to have a gate, I don't know why it's a problem for them to have a gate as long as there is access allowed to the board. And that was always, you know, what it was. People can still walk around if they want, you know, but getting into bigger things and allowing vehicles or people, other stuff beyond that, I just think is not the scope of the board and not okay. And as a homeowner, I mean, I do think we have more rights. I don't really want to have to get into hiring an attorney and fighting with the board and causing more issues and more money for the board. But, you know, I just don't feel like as homeowners on those properties, we're being heard. And the board is taking into consideration what we want.
Can I address this? So I do recall at a prior meeting we did decide that we were putting on the agenda and looking at the budget and addressing the continuity of all the access and the gates so there's a uniformity between all of them. So looking at cost and what it would cost the community or the homeowners, there was a partial discussion and, you know, I would say more positive agreement of having an access of a gate with there being a 3 to 4 foot pedestrian and access, so if there needs to be an inspection of the canals, that there's not vehicular traffic going down that right away.
And that's never been an issue. There's always been, and obviously given access for...
Okay, let me finish.
Okay.
So there's a few of the gates that do not allow for any access whatsoever. They're on the north end. They would address to you personally, but that you cannot get through, that does not have that 3 or 4 foot measurement. And so I do recall that we did slate it for us to utilize that in that budget for an upcoming, as Mr. Bradford did, to address all the gates so that there is a uniformity. You can have your gate, but that there's an access around it and how we're going to address the repair and the change of the other great gates that exist.
And that's totally logical. And
correct. And that's, I think that's that was the forward thought and opinion of the board when we addressed it at that point in time. And unfortunately, because we only meet once a month and get to address these things, you know, within a couple hours, that we did address it. That was a mistake that we made. We addressed the budget to allow for that, and that will be obviously something we're going to address.
Well, and one other thing I would like to bring up while we're talking about it is on the budget for this year, it was proposed to add additional funds of $15,000 to $20,000, I think, to start mowing and maintaining those perimeter roads on a monthly basis. Whereas they've previously been maintained, I think every 6 months or so they go through and mow them. So we're adding an addition, which this has been done since the capital improvement project without issue. So I don't agree with having this money added to our budget for mowing, as the one lady said. You know, the mowing
we didn't add it.
Is question. Okay, well, the money was put there just in case. It's not been approved.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, I mean, the ditches aren't necessarily being maintained, mowed to standards I would agree with to begin with, but to give a company more money to do something that really doesn't need to be done and hasn't been an issue since 2007, I don't agree with. And I think it's good for, you know, the people here should know that this is an option of being discussed.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, are there any other questions? Okay, I've got one thing I'd just like to say as we do close today. And I wanted to thank Vin Bogaz for his service on the board. I want to thank Judy Tapley for hers and all of the previous supervisors that have sat in this position over the years. They've all worked very hard at the jobs that they do. Nobody was a professional in coming in here and starting this job. They all have had to learn, work at it, strive to do the very best that they could, and every one of them along the way, I believe, did that. And I just want to make sure that we thank them as they deserve that. A lot of hours went in it for their little teeny bit of money that they may have received, and I don't think there's one of them that came here to do it for them. So they all need to be thanked, and they do need to be remembered for the service that they gave to this community. I would also like to invite at the next board meeting in October any of the people running for city council that would like to come in and just make a statement as to their they're running in their positions. The ones that live out here in our community, of course. Okay, so I think we have 3 people running, and I'd like to invite them, if anybody knows any of them, talk to any of them, invite them to come to the meeting and tell us what they're gonna do for us. With that, I put a motion on the board to adjourn this meeting.
Second motion.
Okay. This meeting's now adjourned. I'd also like to say, can we take a 10-minute break? We've been in here for 2 hours. And so we'll re-adjourn at about 10 minutes. Okay?